Welcome back everyone to another episode of Close to Broke. My name is Karen, and today we got a pretty fun session in store for y'all. We're just getting here now to the Lucky Lady session starting shortly. We've got to hop in there. We are actually a little late to the game. Traffic was not very helpful to us, but either way, let's get into today's session and not talk too much more about non-poker stuff. Let's get into it.
As you can see from the title, there are quite a bit of things that we need to get to in today's session. Grab your popcorn, share the video with your mom, your friend, your brother, your dad, your cousin, your fourth cousin, your wife, your husband, whatever the case may be, whoever your friend may be, let them know because we got a fun session to go over. In this very first hand, we're six-handed at this point, and I look down at a really interesting situation after under the gun raises to 50, the button calls, and I look down at ace king offsuit in the small blind. I decided to 3-bet it up here to $200. The straddler and under the gun player, as well as the button, decides to call. We're going several ways off to a flat that looks pretty good to me. King, queen, 9, rainbow. We flop top pair on a really connected board. I think we have a pretty clear bet here and evaluate. I decided to bet a little bit on the chunkier side for 275. Only the initial raiser calls, so we're thinning out the field here. Going to a turn card that comes at deuce of spades absolutely changes nothing. It does add a backdoor flush draw, so I guess it changes the board in some aspects. I decide to play this as a check to control the size of the pot. My opponent obliges and decides to check it back. We're going off to a river card that comes out the 4 of hearts. Once again, pretty much the nut run out. It brings no big draws there, brings nothing, literally nothing of note. I decide to bet 500 for value. My opponent pretty quickly makes a call and says 2 pair, but not what you guys were thinking, as he shows king deuce of clubs. Yeah, man, that one's gonna be a real heartbreaker. Didn't see that 2 pair coming, that's for sure. And yeah, I don't know, do you guys have players that just hold it over on you somehow, some way? This opponent, I can just never find a way, an ability to win a pot off of them. It's just remarkable. All these big pots are just either way, who wants to listen to me complain? We've got so much more poker to go over, and I'm excited to do just that. Things are sure as heck not moving swimmingly, but hey, if the road is not worth traveling, then why travel it? Is that even a sign? I have no idea, but we have a new hand to go over. Under the gun limps, next to act calls the limp, and I look down at Jack 10 off here. I decided to bump it up here to $150. Our opponents have been really sticky if we don't use larger sizing, so I've got to go ahead and do just that. The under the gun limper decides to make the call. We're going to heads up to a flop that comes queen 6-4 with 2 hearts. The action on me here, I decided to bet small here for 100, about a third the size of the pot. My opponent calls instantly, and we're going off to a turn card that is a pretty good card as it comes at deuce of hearts. I decided to bet 300. My opponent wastes no time and snap calls here. Usually, as we talk about, that's pretty indicative of a sign of relative weakness. And we're going off to a river card that comes the 8 of diamonds. So, not a whole lot changes here. Maybe a couple of the straight draws, like 5-7 suited, get there. But outside of that, it just doesn't change much the board texture. I think at the end of the day, going not too large is a good idea. If I polarize myself, I won't allow myself to ever have a middling hand for value. If I had a hand like a middling flush, or if I had a hand like aces with the ace of hearts, I wouldn't ever go with super polar sizing. So I just make it $600, and my opponent pretty quickly makes a call and shows queen 9 of clubs. So unfortunately, we couldn't get him off that hand. That's exactly something we put him on, but I guess it doesn't matter what you even know your opponent has. Even if they show you the hand and they're just not willing to fold, you can't do much. So starting off this session on the wrong foot, but that's never stopped us before. 10 hands in today's session, so we have a lot more to go over. Hold on to your seats, folks, because we still got quite a bit to talk about. In this very next hand, middle position opens to 60. There's a straddle at 20 on, of course. The big blind calls. I'm in the straddle. We look down at queen 10 of clubs. Looks like a good hand to just call here. Don't want to get blown off my equity if I 3 or 4 bet out of position. So I go ahead and do just that. I make the call as opposed to 3 betting. And the flop comes out pretty good as it comes queen 4 deuce rainbow. We do flop ourselves top pair and a backdoor flush draw. Action checked over to the initial raiser who bets 50. The big blind calls 50. And this is a really cool spot, I think, to throw in a check raise. So I raised to 200. Both opponent makes the call. And we're going off to a turn card that comes out a pretty good one as it comes to 4 of hearts. Obviously, a little unfortunate if my opponent has hands like aces or kings, as now they're very less likely to fold and it's harder for me to beat them as a 10 doesn't help me. I bet 140, super small, I realize that, but I'm now targeting a smaller and smaller range of hands when I go bigger. So when I think I go really small, I can allow my opponents to call way more wider. Either way, the initial raiser calls and the big blind folds. We're going off to a river card that comes with 3 of spades. Well, I don't know how to really react to this. I don't think I'm worried too much about a hand like ace-5 or 5-6, although you can't completely discount them. But I think I have a pretty easy spot where I can bet and probably fold to most raises. Hard to have a bluff on this river, but again, as we said before, we'll just cross that bridge when we get to it. I throw out a small blocker bet at this point for $100, looking to get value from a lot of hands that are inferior and looking to prevent myself from having to call a bigger bet from a hand that is superior. My opponent thinks about it for a second before deciding to throw in the call. We show our hand, and we are, in fact, good. Looks like everything worked out well in that hand. Once again, I find myself in the blender in this next hand where the middle position player makes it 50. I'm in the big blind. We look down at Jack-9 of clubs. I decide to just call here. This hand can realize a ton of equity post-flop, so let's go ahead and start realizing it. The straddler calls as well. We're going 3 ways off to a flop that comes queen, 8-4, rainbow. Once again, we flop ourselves backdoor flush draw, but this time around we have ourselves a gutter ball. This is a really good hand to check raise with. I check it over to my opponent in position, who decides to check it back, and the other opponent in position decides to check it as well. We're going off to a turn card that definitely helps us now as it brings in the Jack of Diamonds. This is a really wet card here. Definitely not a card that I can be super ecstatic about, but hey, we improved to second pair and everybody checked the flop. I decided to lead out here for a really small bet of $50, going less than a third of the size of the pot. My opponent first folds, and then my opponent here, which is the initial raiser, decides to raise it to 200. Okay, this is a little bit tricky now, but I think against a small raise like this, we can pretty comfortably call. So I go ahead and do just that. We're going out to a river card that comes out a really interesting card as it comes out the 3 of diamonds. It does bring in that backdoor flush, but when I check it over to my opponent, he's fidgeting with his chips and looks like he's about to bet 300 at the last moment, decides to change his mind, and he bets 200. Now I am deep into the tank and once again in the blender. One of the many spots in poker where I just don't know exactly what to do or the perfect instance or the perfect play to make. Really hard to find a bunch of bluffs here. I think there's sometimes my opponent can have a hand like 10-8 of diamonds and that got there as a backdoor pair plus flush draw. I think sometimes my opponent can also have like 10-8 of spades and just, you know, looked to do the old check raise against me and vice versa. I'm losing my mind here going over this, but that's just honestly how I felt at the table. I tanked for quite some time before eventually deciding to go with my gut read here and say that I think my opponent either backed into a flush or just slow played a big hand against me. I ended up making the fold here, even though it's a really good price, and my opponent Nelson, a really great friend of the vlog, massive shout out to him, was kind enough to show the 7 high flush. He ended up turning a massive amount of equity with the 7-6 diamonds. For the gutter balls was a flush draw. He ends up getting there, and luckily for us, we were able to get away from that hand. I just want to quickly interrupt this video with a really important thing to mention to y'all. If you guys didn't know, the private game that you guys are watching is something that I host myself here at the Lucky Lady Casino outside here in LA, California. It's like just a few minutes from the Hustler, and it's actually connected and owned by the same folks. It's super easy to get in the game. If you guys are interested, I'll leave right here. I'm making it as easy as humanly possible. If you look right here, the phone number of how to text me personally, not a robot, not some random human. How to text me is right here if you want to get into the game. Send me over a text. Let me know a little bit about yourself and why you want to hop into the game. We're hosting the game once every week, and we're looking for some new faces to hop in with us. Outside of that, all of the usual things as I mentioned to y'all all the time. WSV giveaway is going on right now. It ends in March. If you guys are interested in joining, we're going to be giving one to a channel member as well as one to a random viewer like yourselves. If you guys are interested, it's going to be a WSOP buy-in, your flight, your travel, as well as your room and board. Obviously, all of that will be taken care of by myself, coming out of my own pocket. If you guys are interested in that, send a 60 to 90 second long video letting me know why I should choose you to be the winner. All of that to be said, we need to get back to a video, specifically this video and the next hand. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, let all your friends know about the Close to Broke channel. Let them know that they want to, you know, stop by, hang out. Over 60% of you folks are not even subscribed, so it goes a long way in helping out the channel grow. That's enough for me talking. Let's get back to the video. So we're doing pretty poorly right now, but if we're being totally honest, if I was batting 250 in the show, I'd probably have a pretty sizable contract. I mean, we're talking like 15-year, 350 million, you know, nothing too shabby. But in poker, that's not that good. So let's get back to reality and stop living in dream world. In this next hand, I'm in early position and we look down at queen 10 of diamonds. Good enough to open. I make it $60 to go. The action folds to the button, who's Nelson, the player from the last hand, who 3-bets to 100. Action folds back to me. And with all this action here, yeah, we don't need to pretend like we can't call. We have a suited Broadway, straight flush, royal flush potential. I'm going to go ahead and call for $40 only more. And the flop comes out really reasonable as it comes Jack 10-9 with 2 hearts and a club. We flop ourselves an open-ender and second pair. I check it over to my opponent and decide the check call is $100 C-bet. The turn card comes out a 3 of diamonds. Once again, changing not much to the board. At this point, I check it over to my opponent. He bets 300. And once again, I think I have a pretty easy, clear-cut just call. We're going off to a river card that comes out the 8 of hearts. So we improve ourselves to a beautiful straight, but a little bit worrisome as the front door flush comes in. I don't know how to, like I said, react or condense a range down to a specific or narrow set of hands when my opponent min-click 3-bets me in position from the button. But I'm assuming that there's a fair chance that some hearts are in his range. And if that's the case, I think my hand plays much better as a check call than a bet. Or at least that was how I felt in time. I'm sure in the comment section down below, you guys will notify me what you guys think. But in real time, I decided to just check it over to my opponent, who decides to check it back. He shows pocket aces. Pocket aces are no good. I don't know if I'd get value on the river. He didn't even have the ace of hearts, I don't think. But just kind of unfortunate as we just found a way to get lucky against aces and we won the literal minimum. If we find a way to check raise on any of those spots, we can probably build a pot here and things can work out a little better. Nonetheless, happy to take a pot down finally. We are several hours into today's session and we've still got some battling to do as we still have that energy, that heart, that spirit to continue going. Under the gun makes it $100 to go. The button, the small blind call. I'm in the straddle. We look down at Jack 8 offsuit. I decide to call here considering I'm getting a really good price to call and see some cards. The flop comes out Jack 3 deuce with 2 hearts and a spade. Flopping top pair on a pretty reasonably wet board texture. I check it over to the initial raiser who decides to bet for 130 bones. Action's called by the button. And then the action gets back over to me here. I think we have a pretty easy call. We're going 3 ways off to a turn card that comes to 7 of diamonds. Not a whole lot changes here. No straight draws to worry about. No flush draws coming in. At this point, the initial raiser decides to double barrel for 330 bucks. Button folds, action back on me. Now tricky here. It goes from maybe there's a world where our opponent is bluffing to now it's a little less likely as our opponent has now bet into 3 opponents or 4 opponents once and then 3 opponents twice. Does that make sense? Either way here, my hand is probably still a little too good to fold as we still have top pair. So I go ahead and make the call here. Going on to the river card that comes out the deuce of diamonds. Once again, I check it over to my opponent who thinks about it for a moment before deciding to bet 300. At this point, I think I'm really in between deciding what to do. This is a really tough spot. It's hard for my opponent to have a really, really worse hand. But our opponent has shown, thank goodness, the ability to bluff. He's done it in a couple of different spots, and all of my other opponents have found a way to catch him bluffing. Maybe this is my opportunity to do the same. Maybe my opponent's value owning himself with a hand like pocket 10s or pocket 9s or 8s or something. Hard to tell, but I decided to just fling in the call because when things don't make sense in my own head, I just do that. My opponent shows ace jack off. So really good hand by him getting max value. Got to tip your cap off to our opponent here. Couldn't do much better on his part. We have another fun one to go over here as Like I've said, we're playing 10-handed. I don't know if I mentioned that yet, but we're playing 10-handed, and we have been for quite some time, which means hands and distribution of hands are not looking really, really gravy. This next hand, low jack, makes it $60 to go. I'm on the button, and we look down at 10-5 of clubs. This is an absolute dog crap hand, but I've been literally not able to play any hand. Boredom is settling in, but maybe to our opponents, it can look like we're really playing tight because we just can't catch a hand. We can't catch a break. Either way, I decide to 3-bet it up to $200 here. If I'm going to play the hand, I got to play this. At least try to get a heads up. It's going to be hard to win with 10-5 against multiple opponents. Folds back to our opponent who makes a call. We're going to heads up to a flop that's actually pretty good for our hand. It comes 10-5-4. Rainbow, we flop ourselves. Backdoor flush draw on second pair. Action check to me. I bet really small here, going about a quarter or a third of the size of the pot for 125. Our opponent pretty quickly makes a call here, and we're going to off to a turn card that comes the Jack of Hearts. At this point, I'm just clicking buttons. I don't really know what the hell I'm doing. My opponent checks it over to me, and I just think I'm equity denying, and I just honestly want the hand to be over and would hate if my opponent had maybe a hand like ace-3 or something, or maybe 3-7. I really don't know. I just check it over. When he checks it over to me, I think betting is not the worst option in the world, probably not the best either, but I go ahead and do that. I bet 300, and my opponent pretty quickly decides to make the fold. He shows me the 3 of spades and says he was looking for some backdoor equity, so luckily for us, he didn't get any because our hand was not looking good against much backdoor equity. At this point, several people have taken a break from the game. We're playing 6-handed. I look down at 8-7 offsuit here from the cutoff. I raised to $60, once again just capitalizing on what I think is being perceived as a really tight image. As like I've said, we have not played many hands since our day has started, mostly because we're just so, multi-way. Either way, I make it 60 from the cutoff. The button, the small blind, and the straddle all make the call. We're going 4 ways off to a flop that's Jack 9-3 rainbow. Action checked over to me, and I decide to size up here for about half the size of the pot for 125. The button and the small blind make the call, so we're looking to need to get some more equity or get there. And by get there, I mean add some more equity, as a turn card is a majestic 6 of clubs. Sure, we don't actually improve to a hand that has showdown value. We still have 8 high, but man, oh man, that's probably the best turn card in the deck. We now improve to an open-ender. Any 10, any 5 now give us the nuts or the second nuts. And with all that being said, I think after the opponent's checking at me, I've got to put max pressure on. I bet $500, going massive here now, going about the size of the pot, and definitely looking scary, or, looking like I'm somewhat interested in this pot. My opponent tanks for quite some time here from the button before deciding to fold, and the small blind folds as well. So finally, we're able to get one through there. This session, although it might not seem like it, as a lot of losing has gone on, has really found a way to come around here. We were into this game for about 5,000. We were down to our low point around 2,500. And after battling back and a lot of hands that you guys haven't seen on the vlog, because there's been a lot of small 3-bet and take-its or 3-bet, C-bet flop take-its, we are now close to even. Yes, almost back to black, baby. We even get over black. Let's go. So since the last hand y'all saw, we have literally not played any meaningful pots here for like the last hour or so. I mean, that's not an exaggeration. It probably has been like 2 or 3 hours. We are now in the wee morning or the wee hours of the night. It's probably like 1:30 or 1 o'clock in the morning here when this next hand happens. And it's a PLO double board bomb pot, so buckle up, y'all, because this is a freaking roller coaster and probably the reason why you clicked on today's video. This video is actually going to be catching up here on the turn, so I've got some action to pick y'all up on. My hand is 10-9-6-5 with the 9-6 of clubs. There's a $50 bomb pot 10 ways, so $500. And if you count up the cards, we actually can't even burn the river card. There's just 2 cards left on the deck going to the river. And the flops come out here looking pretty interesting. As on the top board, it comes out 4-5-3 rainbow, and on the top it comes king 8-7 with 2 spades. Action checked over to the middle position player who bets pot, which is 500. I make the call, and the gentleman to my left also makes a call. We're going off to a turn card. On the top board that comes out the 5 of hearts, improving me to trips. And on the bottom board, improving me to the nuts as it comes a jack of diamonds. Oh my gosh, this is exactly what we needed. My opponent to my left has around my exact same stack, and my opponent on the right is going all in for $1,500. We have a really massive stranglehold on this hand. Sure, there are some opportunities for boats on one of the boards, but we have the stone cold nuts on one of the other boards. So much to look forward to, and with the action on me after my opponent bets all in, I have a clear-cut rejam all in myself. I go all in for approximately $4,000. This is everything we've been waiting for to this point. Excitement, adrenaline is setting in, and the opponent to my left ends up calling all in. So hopefully we are live on both boards. If we need to catch up on the board I have trips on, we still have a ton of equity. Either way, we're going 3 ways off to a $13,000 river in the double board bomb pot, which the top board comes out the king of hearts, bringing in a backdoor flush draw, and on the bottom board, bringing in the worst card, an 8 of clubs, pairing the board. Oh my goodness. It's my worst nightmare when our first player to act shows pocket sevens for the rivered boat. Oh, that's freaking gross. Well, we're still live to chop the pot. No longer, actually, as our opponent from the next to act position to me shows 4-5. A massive turn of events there. We were drawing really live on one of the boards, surprisingly, and on the other board, I had the stone cold nuts. No one even was chopping with me. A massive disappointment there. Not even a flush draw for either one of my opponents. It was literally just a board pairing river card. I don't know how many outs that is. I can't do the math off the top of my head, but feels like sub 20% with all of the cards exposed here that we saw in the muck. But yeah, just really a supremely frustrating situation. It seems like in these really big spots and these really big pots, people just find a way to get there against me, and maybe I just got to put it out in the world. You know, I'm just going to get there every time, and I'm just going to hold every time I need to. But a really, really tough pill to swallow. I don't think I could have done anything much different outside of maybe just jamming the flop as we had a wrap on the board. We ended up picking the nut straight on. Frustration is a subtle way of putting it, but we can always improve and get better, and hopefully we can find a way to get there. Well, I don't know how you go about coming back from a massive cooler and a really tough suck out like that last pot. Man, so many words, so little time. But in this next pot, we are looking to cheer ourselves up here as we look down at a really great spot. We're under the gun limps, early position ISOs to 75. The low jack calls, and I'm here on the button with the premium 10-handed pocket tens. Let's go. We raise it up to $300 as a 3-bet in position. Really nice to have a premium as such. Our opponent from the initial raiser position calls. The low jack calls as well. We're going off to a flop here that comes 9-9-6 with 2 diamonds and a heart. With the action checked over to me, I don't have a heart here, and my hand can use definitely some equity denial, some protection against overcards. We can obviously still get called by inferior holdings. When the action's checked to me, I bet 700. Only the initial raiser decides to make the call. The second caller decides to fold. We're going heads up to a turn card that is a pretty gross one as it comes the 8 of diamonds. Brings in some straights, although it's not that likely. But this is the same opponent that had king deuce of clubs against me earlier, so it's really hard to tell. Either way, with the action checked over to me, it'd be really ridiculous, I think, to bet here as the flush draw comes in and I don't have a diamond, so I just check it back. Playing some pot control here. We're going off to a river card that has gone from bad to worse as it double pairs a board here, bringing a 6 of hearts on the river. At this point, my opponent puts out an almost disrespectful prodding bet leading into me for 400. This is a blocker bet if I've ever seen it. The only disappointing part here is that my hand just might be too good to bluff with. Sure, I block a hand like 10-9, but I just feel like my hand's just too good to bluff with. I think I have just a call or a fold, and it's really tough, and it's a really tough pill to swallow, but you can hear me in real time agonizing over this decision. Obviously, as you guys can hear from the audio clip there, it's a really tough spot, and I think my opponent has something like queens or jacks with the jack or the queen of diamonds, allowing themselves to go for a really small blocker bet here on the river as it slightly makes it less likely for me to have, you know, said flush here. Either way, all of that being said, after going deep into the tank and thinking it over, I decided to just save my money and make the fold and rack up tonight. Luckily for us, my opponent was kind enough to show me pocket jacks with the jack of diamonds, so able to arrange our opponent on the right hand there. I don't know, honestly, if my opponent would have folded, to be totally honest. If I made a play at the pot, who knows? But the one thing I know for sure is I played honestly pretty reasonable, made some really big folds today, and some spots I think I just got carried away and curiosity got the best of me. Wasn't the best poker I ever played in my life, but honestly, I'm pretty satisfied. I feel like we could have lost so much more tonight, and with the deck not being on our side either, it's just seems like a recipe for disaster. All of that to be said, I'm really proud of my growth. I'm really proud of our growth as a community, and I think there's so much more to look forward to, so much more that is currently in the works, so much more. There's literally such an amazing and prosperous future for all of us. Hopefully, we are looking for some really great potential moving forward. I appreciate you guys so much for watching and supporting the videos. I can't thank you guys enough for consistently supporting, consistently showing love, and consistently showing out in these videos. If y'all haven't already, it would mean so much to me if you guys would just drop a like, comment, and subscribe on today's video. Share it with a friend, share it with a family member, share it with a loved one. Anyone that loves poker, might love poker, might get into poker. Sharing these videos goes a really long way in helping our channel grow. We've been fairly stagnant as far as growth here, but I believe in us and I believe in you. I believe in all of you. 60% of y'all don't even subscribe to the channel, so if you haven't done so already, maybe just click the sub button. It goes a long way. Either way, that's enough of me ranting on here and rambling on here. We've got some more to talk about in post.
Sorry if the wind's really bad. God, just a frustrating session all in all. We played 10-handed for like the last 5-6 hours of the session, and that makes for a lot of boredom because you just can't get any hands forever. So obviously some things occurred there. And then that bomb pot just like really did it to us. We were in really good shape to take down half of a really big pot. There's a world where our opponent that called with the boat on one of the boards might have even folded. So really crappy river. Just super disappointing, honestly. End of the session. Wish I had good news to report. I was really proud of myself because I was just not getting any hands and really finding a way to battle back. I know the session was like 10 hours long, and over the first 6 hours of the session, I only had like 3 hands for the vlog. So like the last several hands were just over the last couple of hours, and we were just drawing stone dead, it felt like, the whole session. So really frustrating to say the least. We ended up booking a pretty resounding 3K loss in for 51 and out for 2085. So like 3015 was what we lost. Just frustrating all around. Super frustrating. It's windy. Ah, man. Anytime I finally get some things heading in the right direction, we just get absolutely boned in a really big, important spot. Yeah, I chopped the side pot, which was, I guess, okay, but I just took my money back. It wasn't like I chopped a win. And in the main pot, we just get, yeah. Either way, it is what it is. You can't win them all, right? And it's just frustrating because I just want to win. Let me just get on a little bit of a heater. That'll be sick. I just got to put that energy out there, and we'll eventually hit it. Otherwise, it's probably going to do it for me in today's session. Got a long ride home. Frustrated, disappointed. It's been a long, shitty week. And yeah, let's close out today's session. Don't need to harp on the losses. Let's get them back the next time we get out there. Either way, hope you guys have a lovely day. Stay happy, stay healthy, and more importantly, check out the podcast that I dropped today on Tuesday. Outside of that, run good at the tables, y'all. Deuces.